Coming up on Tech News Weekly, Emily Forlini is here, and we start off by talking about RFK Jr.'s plan to get health trackers into the hands of every American. Afterward, we talk about how Apple's CarPlay Ultra is trying to make its way into more cars, but maybe those automakers aren't interested in it. Then Kate Nibbs of Wired stops by to talk about some landmark AI copyright wins before we round things out with Will Sattelberg of 9 to 5 Google, who tells us a little bit about Fairphone's latest, the Fairphone 6. All of that coming up on Tech News Weekly. Stay tuned.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Tech News Weekly, episode 393, recorded Thursday, June 26th, 2025. Wearables for every American? Hello and welcome to Tech News Weekly, the show where every week we talk to and about the people making and breaking that tech news. I am your host, Mikah Sargent, and I am joined this week at the end of June by Emily Forlini. Welcome, Emily. It's been a while.
That was so great. Hi, how you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
I'm excited.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Yeah, I thank you, of course, for your wonderful work. While it just feels like it's been a long time since we've been able to do the show together. So it's great to be back here together to talk about our stories of the week. Yes, this is the time where Emily and I have both picked out stories, and at least in one instance where someone has written that story, and we talk about what's going on. So I will let you take it away.
Okay, so my story of the week is about our friend or foe, depends who you are, RFK Jr. He is leading the health policy for the nation, and he is doing a lot with health trackers. So he, for the past several months, has been reiterating this vision that he wants every American to get a health tracker, like an Apple Watch, a smartwatch, a fitness tracker, a piece of consumer tech that you would buy. And just this past week, I think it was this week actually, he kind of testified or spoke to the House getting approval for his budget. And in the Q&A portion, he reiterated his vision that, quote, every American would have a wearable. And he said that they're going to embark on what he called the biggest advertising campaign the agency has ever done to basically, I guess, convince us all to buy, I think probably Apple Watches. They didn't name it that way. People have their brands they like, but it seems like a really big part of his health strategy is to kind of work with these private companies. He met with a group of CEOs who make these products, not Tim Cook. And so, yeah, that's a very different shift. I haven't seen anything like that.
Yeah, I find it interesting. One of the quotes from the piece, my vision is every American is wearing a wearable within 4 years. They can see what food is doing to their glucose levels, their heart rates, and a number of other metrics as they eat it. So about that first one, unless you were talking about the very new but available over-the-counter option for glucose monitors that you can wear on your arm. Do we think he's thinking like I could just put an Apple Watch on and it tells me my blood glucose levels? Or do you know if he was talking to CEOs of health companies that do? Because like I literally have one over here. It's Lingo from I don't remember. Lingo, I think it's, let me see. Lingo Glucose. Oh, Abbott, which of course is a huge glucose tracking company. And I wore the Lingo for however long it was, 2 weeks, and just saw what different foods were doing and didn't learn much because there wasn't much for me to learn. And by that, I mean like my blood glucose is pretty average, but it was still an interesting thing. But I don't think a lot of people know about that. So I'm kind of curious, do we think that he's talking about those?
Well, that's the thing. It's very broad. And of course, everyone's health is so individual. It seems like he's just saying, hey, we have these devices that, American companies have created. They are really smart. Like I think, for example, the atrial fibrillation detection, like sleep apnea detection, there are a lot of stories out there about how these devices have saved people's lives. The one thing that's a little sticky is kind of like putting the health in the hands of like companies that are incentivized to profit off of it really directly and obviously. And like something I worry about is, there's addiction kind of features in these apps, and they actually can harm your mental health as well. Like you're so worried, what is my sleep score in the morning? And there's a lot of I guess unhealthy aspects to them too. So if you're telling the whole nation and making this policy, like go and buy these devices from these for-profit companies, and then we're going to be a healthier nation, give them your data. Maybe they'll give us your data. It's a very murky policy, but at the same time, I do think those can be almost like miracle products to help people. So I'm like of two minds about it.
Yeah, so very much that. There are already a couple of places where we've seen something like that kind of bear out. There are some, especially if you get insurance, health insurance through your employer here in the United States. Several of them, I shouldn't say many, but several of them offer these little things where you hand over your health data in some way. It might be going in and getting a health test done by a doctor. It might be handing over your Apple Watch wearable data. It might be some other thing like getting a little fitness tracker. And then depending on how well you perform or your body performs, you can get discounts on your health insurance. Sometimes it opens you up to other options. You can get, it's sort of an incentivized program where you get, coupons and things like that. And then we've seen it in car insurance as well. There'll be little dongles, as you are very familiar with, but the listeners might not be. You plug into your OBD2 port, and it looks at how you brake. It looks at how fast you're going, where you're driving, all of that. And on the face of it, it seems like, what we're saying here is if you choose to drive safely and carefully, then you will get a discount. And that part is true. But what people might not realize is all of that data is being scooped up and sent off, and you don't necessarily know where it's going unless you do a lot of digging. But B, it also does mean the opposite, that instead of being positive, it can have positive impacts, it can have very negative impacts. And suddenly you are seeing a change in your policy, and you don't have any control over it, where when it exists in a gray area, right, of not having that physical data, there's you have more standing ground than if they can go, well, I just saw that you broke hard 7 times, and that means that you're not a good driver, so we have to, up your policy. Yeah, that's the part that kind of worries me about this. Particularly with an administration that is also so focused on other aspects of healthcare in the U.S. That's a little concerning.
Or at least is willing to experiment with alternative, not as proven. Like some of their strategies are not necessarily based on years of scientific evidence. So it's like in these health trackers, are they gonna, they said bans for tolerable, like, your sleep like wasn't good. Who says it wasn't good? It's because they set in the tech what defines good sleep, or they set in the tech what defines good exercise. And they probably customize it for the person, but it's like they are in a sense setting standards through these watches or wearables that people now think I'm healthy, I'm not healthy based on that. And it's not like people are really in a position to check like how do they develop those ranges, And so if the government is going to push out standards through these companies, or like, how is that going to work? And there's just a lot of questions.
Well, and I can remember as a kid being part of some federal program.
Wow.
My mom was a single mom, and so she had food assistance for us. And I remember having to go in every couple of months, I think it was. Honestly, I don't remember how often it was, but however often it was, I would have to go in. We would have to go into this office. I was a kid, and I can remember I had to get my finger pricked. And they tested my blood to see that I was getting the nutritional levels that I was supposed to be getting. And that would have an impact on what assistance we were given and, what was needed. And when I think about this, now we're looking at what if, the only way that you get your food stamps is
Yeah.
if you are shown to be taking 10,000 steps a day or something like that. That gets a little frightening.
That's true. Do you know if the program was it WIC?
WIC. Yeah, it was WIC.
So
Yeah.
my sister works on WIC.
Oh, does it still work the same as it did back when I was a kid?
I haven't heard about finger pricking. She does a lot of, she's more on the research side, so she's not working in the offices, but she's working to develop like what would be best to be offered in that program. And I wonder what she would think about all this.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more, I think, from the experts. The problem is when it comes to this this kind of story, it is coming from certain folks who I think they've got the ideas that they have and they're going to make it happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so you don't necessarily hear the alternative, other than for us coming from the tech side, just talking about the concerns around privacy, right? That's a big thing that, easily sticks out.
We work in this, so we see all the ways tech companies abuse this stuff. But the other side of the coin could also be like, there's just a lot of basic health knowledge a lot of people don't have. Like, some people might think eating 8,000 calories a day is normal, and if they had a device that was like, hey, actually, that's not normal. Like, actually, you should cut it back. Like, there could be.
That's a good,
benefits.
Yeah, we should talk about that side of it, right? Yeah, I agree. I think I have seen for people who do get wearable devices, of course there are the negatives. There are the sort of anxieties that can come up, but I have also seen sort of transformative experiences. And I think particularly when it comes to the glucose thing, like that and sleep apnea are probably two areas that I really sort of champion in a way, and like always celebrate.
Are you a sleep nerd? You're a self-identified sleep nerd?
Yes, I am. Yes.
These devices, everyone's talking about their sleep.
Yes, everybody's talking about their sleep, and again, there are anxieties there, so much so that there's actually a term for, like, doctors have now come up with a term for when somebody's sleep scores and their sleep metrics cause them to have worse sleep because they have so much anxiety about it. But outside of that, I do think that in particular with sleep apnea, a lot of times people just are like, oh yeah, I snore. Sleep apnea is frightening because of what it actually does to the physical structures inside of your body and how it changes the pressures in your chest, which causes your heart to have to beat in a way that is not sort of its natural way of beating. So it can cause your heart muscle to grow stronger in ways that poorly affect you. And of course, less sleep overall. Like, there's so much impact there. So more people learning about that and then having something to help them out with it, I think is great. Heart rhythms, you may not realize that you have an arrhythmia, and being able to have that is cool. So yeah, I like the idea of people having more access to this. I don't like the idea of the government having more access to
like
this,
you could just,
if that ends up being the case.
We could just have more health trackers and like not have the government involved.
That would be awesome.
Two things they can maybe do more like research-based, less collective interest-based, public health work.
Yeah.
But I think one other angle we didn't discuss is obviously, as part of Trump's whole agenda, they're downsizing a lot of these agencies. So there's huge cuts that RFK Jr. is making to the agency. And I don't know if the wearables thing is outsourcing some of the work.
Yeah. Okay. If you don't have to have the human bodies kind of keeping track of the metrics that would already be part of the process, that makes sense. So yeah, that could be a big part of why this is going on.
I just want to see the ads. Like, when people start seeing the ads, like, we need to talk about it.
Let us know.
Yeah, let us know.
If you see them first, I want to know what they look like.
Is this going to be the new Got Milk? Like,
oh my God, that would be interesting. And also, or the new "This is your brain on drugs," like the PSAs. You know what I mean?
The new
don't
dare.
do drugs. Yeah, the new dare. It's got to be something that's like slightly cringy, or else it doesn't feel like it came from the government.
Yeah, it's going to be like a piece of celery being like, "Get a wearable."
I love it. I hope that's what it is. It's just celery with eyeballs saying, "Get a wearable."
Googly eye celery. All right. Love it.
All right, let's take a quick break before we come back with my story of the week. I want to tell you about Drata. We're bringing you this episode of Tech News Weekly. If you are leading risk and compliance at your company, well, I'm looking at you and you probably have 10. You're wearing 10 hats all at once. You are managing security risks, compliance demands, budget constraints, and you're doing it all while trying not to be seen as that roadblock that slows the business down. But GRC isn't just about checking boxes. You know that. It's a revenue driver that builds trust, accelerates deals, strengthens security, and that's why modern GRC leaders turn to Drata. It's a trust management platform that automates the tedious tasks so you get to focus on reducing risk, proving compliance, and scaling your program. With Drata, you can automate security questionnaires, evidence collection, and compliance tracking. You can stay audit ready with real-time monitoring, and you can simplify security reviews with Drata's Trust Center and AI-powered questionnaire assistance. Instead of spending hours proving trust, build it faster with Drata. Ready to modernize your GRC program? Visit drata.com/technews to learn more. And our thanks to Drata for sponsoring this week's episode of Tech News Weekly. All right, we are back from the break. I'm joined by Emily Forlini for this episode of Tech News Weekly, and it is time for my story of the week. Apple's newest in-car interface, CarPlay Ultra, represents a dramatic expansion of its automotive ambitions, taking over not just infotainment, but actually the entire dashboard. And while some automakers are eager to adopt this immersive system, honestly, others are hesitant or in some cases even resistant. At the heart of the debate is this fundamental question: who owns the in-car experience, the automaker or the tech company? And here's the thing about that fundamental question. Why is there not the third one, which is the person who purchased the car? Because that is what it feels like is the person who ends up suffering in this case. So I want to talk a little bit about CarPlay Ultra. First and foremost, in comparison to CarPlay. So many people are familiar with CarPlay. I always bring up one aspect of it that I think people don't pick up on with CarPlay and both with and also with Android Auto. These systems are not built into your car. And a lot of times that is the thought, that you sort of plug in your phone and that's the key to turn it on in your car. And that's not the case. What's happening is your phone is projecting this system into your car. So your phone software has CarPlay built into it, or your Android phone has Android Auto built into it. And when you plug it in or you connect wirelessly, you're pushing that data onto the screen or screens that are available in the car. And that's important because, of course, that works fundamentally different from the built-in infotainment systems. Those are in the car. Those are part of the car's software. And in many cases up to this point, what that's meant is the car's software, firmware, all works much closer to what the car physically is doing. So things like speedometers and HVAC controls and all of that traditionally have needed to be done by the thing that's built into the car itself, because having any lag when it comes to speedometers, to some of these other controls is a hazard. But with CarPlay Ultra and the work that the company has done on improving its software in this very particular thing, it's all about that no latency experience. And of course, working closer with car manufacturers to kind of overlay onto the dashboard experience. So with CarPlay Ultra, speedometers, as I mentioned, HVAC controls, radio and media functions are all part of the experience, and it kind of overlays onto your car and you get this really Apple branded UI across the screens. But as it happens, and I think as it makes sense, a car manufacturer who comes up with a concept and a design and everything may feel a type of way about that part of their car being taken over by another company. That's something that you are bringing into the car. I want to open this up in just a moment, but really quickly, I'll also mention kind of where things stand right now. Aston Martin and Porsche are actively adopting this technology. Ford and Audi say that they are planning to adopt it. Hyundai, Nissan, Mercedes-Benz, Kia, Infiniti are saying we're evaluating it, and Volvo, Genesis, Jaguar / Land Rover, Polestar, and Renault, I think, are saying we're not planning to adopt it. And then, of course, GM and BMW are both going, yeah, no, that's not happening at all. I wanted to ask you, because there are kind of two parts of this, Emily. One is that sort of ideological aspect of, if you design the thing, do you get to design it from the ground up? And do you bear in mind what an end user might want for their vehicle? And then we will also talk in a little bit about the data collection privacy implications that also are, I think, part of this conversation. But yeah, your first take on this, what you think about the car infotainment systems in general, how you approach it whenever it comes to vehicles. Like, do you like using what the car provides, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, so this is kind of one of my big reporting spaces, so I have a lot of context. So one key thing is Google already has a version of this that it's called Google built in, and some car companies have already adopted it. So they have a Google version that is the dash, is all the screens. So Apple's really doing a catch up here and saying, we're also going to offer that. And, I'm sure Google has pitched every car company on the globe to get their experience, and also not all of them have gone for it. So this is not a new debate. So Volvo and Polestar do have the Google built in, and I've been in their latest vehicles that have that, and it looks beautiful. It looks really great. And I interviewed the former Polestar CEO about this, and he was like, when cell phones became big, everyone was like, the car dash screens look like, caveman tools compared to slick cell phones. So every car company was like, we're going to become a tech company, and they're like going to hire all these engineers, and they're going to make their dash screen just as good as a cell phone, and the tech's going to be so much better. And he was like, but the years have gone by, and we're just not that good at it. Like, it just didn't really happen. I mean, like, Tesla put a lot of effort into their dash screen, which is a bit more like that. And he was like, yeah, we're not great. We do other things. And so we decided to get Google built in because it looks great. It's something our users, already are familiar with. The maps on the infotainment screen just are Google Maps. And it's like, great, that's all I really want, So Apple is just coming in with a competitor, and that's really what's happening here. So there kind of could be a fork in the road of like companies that go for Google, companies that go for Apple, and then companies like Tesla or Rivian or GM, or it sounds like BMW, who are like, no, we're on our own path. We're building our own tech stack. We're going to connect it to the EV battery. We're going to connect it to our mobile app. And they have their own tech vision. So that's kind of the state of the union.
So why do you think Google's has not kind of been at the crux of the conversation here, given that it did it first, and seems to be not as troublesome that it's doing the full in Google car experience? Like,
I think this is a weird media, like the way the story is evolving doesn't really make sense to me. And I'm not sure if it's because people are not familiar with Google's product, which is actively in some of the most popular cars. So I'm not sure if people are creating a false tension or
interesting.
I haven't written about it because I'm kind of like, I don't really understand what's happening here.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's odd because we have seen car manufacturers like GMC said, going forward, we're not supporting CarPlay.
Yeah.
And what was the other one? BMW, we're not supporting CarPlay. And I've heard from people who said, well, I want to use CarPlay in my car. I've used CarPlay for years. I like it. And I think too, as you mentioned, it's been the case for so long that those in-dash infotainment systems kind of sucked, to put it frankly. And you would do everything you could anecdotally to avoid having a conversation with the car sound that sounded like this. It was horrible. And oftentimes
you just plug in CarPlay or Android Auto and you're just trying to forget.
Get it out of the way. Exactly. So I understand why people are not wanting to, have the built-in systems, but I also understand a company wanting to kind of own that experience. And I wonder if that maybe is where there's friction, because that's Apple's whole thing is we own every part of the stack. And so we make our hardware, we make our software, they combine together, they work so well together, and we think about design and this and that. Whereas Google is more obsequious and it's just kind of like, oh, we'll be where you need us to be. And so I wonder if there's maybe, now that these teams, as you mentioned, have been built up for like, I think about being a designer or developer working for BMW, and my job did not exist maybe to the extent that it does now 15 years ago, 10 years ago. And going forward, I have to continue to make it so that my job is important. And I think part of that is kind of pushing back and saying, oh, no, we are not ceding ground to Apple, to Google, to whomever. We can do this ourselves and we can do it better. Don't fire me.
I think it's that, but it's also more like the car company is now handing over that experience to a non-car company. So if you think like Rivian puts a lot of work into its dash and they develop new dash features that Apple would be so far behind on, like really unique ways of calculating range and energy and finding chargers, things like the pet mode. There's a button on the dash, you press that and your whole car turns into like a pet mode. They have all these really fun things. They have you access to different modes, drive modes, like through the dash. So their whole experience is custom. And if they're gonna, you couldn't do it now. You're requesting features to Apple, like screw that,
Yeah.
And you're convincing them, add this to your product. So I guess that by the way is very Apple-like mentality. So the more similar a company is to Apple, probably the less interested they are in this.
That's a good point. And that does bear out. Absolutely. We are running out of time, but I did want to mention another aspect of this that is front of mind for me. I think it was the Mozilla Foundation that did a study looking at the major car manufacturers and their built-in infotainment systems and looking at the data collection policies of them. And some of them are pretty egregious. There was even one, I think it was, I don't want to say who I think it was because that might be inaccurate, but there was one car company who was even collecting data on sexual activity as one of the data points. The Mozilla Foundation was like, we have no idea how they would know that, what they would be doing to try to determine that, but that was part of the data collection.
For high schoolers.
Yeah, exactly. And that is one thing one place where, I like using CarPlay over a built-in system where I at least know the privacy and data collection policies of Apple and what is collected, how it's collected, and how it's shared, versus maybe not knowing that for an external or for the car company and what they would want to do with that data. So that's something that I've kind of kept in mind as we look at all of this. But yeah, when it comes to those really custom designs like you talk about with Rivian, I think I would want what Rivian provides, if it's good, over what Apple, brings to the table externally. I hate to say goodbye, but we've got somebody waiting in the wings. So I want to say, first of all, thank you very much, Emily, for being here. If people would like to follow the great work that you're doing, where are the places they should go to do that?
I'm in all the places. I'm on Blue Sky. I'm on Twitter, although I don't post too much there. So Blue Sky is probably the best option. And where else? I mean, LinkedIn, if you like that. We got TikTok, but I think Blue Sky would be good. I'm actually 2 followers away from my next threshold. So
we got to get Emily there. So yes, are you at Emily Forlini there?
Yeah.
Beautiful. Head there today,
You'll have a
somebody.
special place in my heart if you're in the next two. Yeah.
Beautiful. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, and I'll see you again soon.
Yeah. Thanks. Have a good day.
All righty, folks. We're going to take a quick break before we come back with our next an interview with Kate Knibbs of Wired, all about the very interesting and very, I think, important conversation around AI copyright rulings. But first, let me tell you about Storyblock, who are bringing you this episode of Tech News Weekly. You probably know the pain of legacy CMSs. They promise enterprise-grade features, but deliver slow, clunky systems that unfortunately need dev support for even the smallest update. And when you're trying to move fast, that's a nightmare. Storyblock changes that. Unlike those monolithic CMSs, Storyblock is headless, completely decoupling your back end from your front end. Developers can build in any framework, React, Astro, Vue, etc., while marketers can use an intuitive visual editor to create and update content without filing dev tickets. Storyblock scales, whether you're a freelancer or part of a global enterprise. With a global CDN, AWS data centers in the US, Europe, and Asia, it's built for performance at scale. Storyblock is enterprise ready with role-based access control, enterprise SLAs, and top-tier security. It's the stuff Fortune 500s demand. One global e-commerce giant switched to Storyblock and cut content update cycles from weeks to hours. Another major brand empowered marketing to launch campaigns independently, freeing up devs for bigger projects. Storyblock has an API-first approach, so your content loads faster anywhere in the world, and that means better UX, higher engagement, and improved SEO. With a real-time visual editor, marketers see exactly what their content will look like before publishing. No more endless back and forth over minor tweaks. Devs get fewer interruptions, marketers get more autonomy. Win-win. If you're an agency, Storyblock offers multi-client workspaces, flexible permissions, and seamless collaboration tools. You can manage multiple projects without disrupting development workflows. So whether you're a startup, an enterprise, or an agency juggling multiple clients, Storyblock gives you the power and flexibility you need. Try it today at storyblock.com/TwitTV-25 and use code TWIT25. Twit listeners get 20% off for 3 months on Growth and Growth Plus plans. That's storyblock.com/TwitTV-25 with code TWIT25 for 20% off the first 3 months on Growth and Growth Plus plans. STORYBLOK.com/TWIT-TV-25 with code TWIT25. Thanks so much to Storyblock for sponsoring this week's episode of Tech News Weekly. All right, we are back from the break, and I'm very excited about this next interview. We are joined once again by Kate Knibbs of Wired. Welcome back to the show, Kate.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, so you are a prolific writer. You've now covered 2 major AI copyright rulings in the same week. I'd love to know what stood out to you most about how differently the courts handled the Meta and Anthropic cases, and maybe a quick little kind of overview of what's going on with these cases.
Sure thing. Yeah, it was a very busy week. Please pray with me that no other huge copyright news breaks.
Yes, let's take a moment. Okay, good.
Thank you. Yes, so there are dozens of AI copyright lawsuits currently winding through the courts. These were the first 2 summary judgments from judges dealing with generative AI. So they're hugely precedent setting. They're both very important. And they're fascinating because on the surface, both of the judges sided with the AI companies over whether some of their use of copyrighted materials was fair use in these cases. So surface level looks like a win for Anthropic, looks like a win for Meta. What's fascinating is that there are also losses for the tech companies in very different ways. And I will explain. So Judge William Alsup made the summary judgment in the Anthropic case, and he basically came out and said, in general, it's fair use to use copyrighted materials to train AI tools. However, because during the discovery process, it came out that Anthropic had pirated over 7 million books to create a library that it was planning to use to train AI tools, the judge said, well, piracy is not okay, and you still have to go to trial over that. And so the plaintiffs are going to be able to take Anthropic to trial on the damages. Could be over $1 trillion, which would be really bad for Anthropic. Yeah.
Wow.
And it opens the door for other plaintiffs to do the same to other AI companies, because Anthropic isn't the only AI company that it's known that they used pirated materials.
Yeah, the precedent of it all.
Yeah. So one of the AI companies that we know also used pirated materials is Meta. And in the Meta case that was decided yesterday, the plaintiff's lawyers spent a lot of time arguing about the piracy angle, saying, we can't ignore this. They pirated these books. That is theft. It doesn't matter what they did with them, really. Like, we got to address this. But the judge, Judge Vince Chabria, he didn't really care about this argument. Like, it was not of interest to him. He was laser focused on whether the plaintiffs could prove that Meta harmed their financial prospects by training on their books. He really, really wanted the plaintiffs to prove what is called market harm. And so his ruling was, I'm siding with Meta, but not because I think that every single instance of training on copyrighted books is fair use. It's because I think the plaintiffs did a bad job arguing their case, pretty much. So that also leaves a very large door open for other plaintiffs to bring Meta to file lawsuits against Meta for copyright infringement and just argue it differently. So yeah, it's really wild to see how this has all unfolded.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. In the Anthropic case, the court called LLM training, and I thought this is kind of, again, all of this is so interesting. I'm sure you probably shout this at people walking down the street, like, pay attention. No, I'm kidding. But I would want to do that. Like, you don't understand. All of this is so precedent setting. And I can't imagine being a judge who has to make any of these rulings, because you're really like, wow. Anyway, so the court called LLM training, quote, one of the most transformative uses we'll ever see. How important is that fair use framing, and what precedent? I know I'm going to keep saying that word. Somebody's going to have to start to make a little drinking game, but what precedent might it set?
I think when all of the defense attorneys for the AI companies read that line, they probably took a shot of celebratory champagne or something, because that's definitely going to be huge going forward for them as something to point to say, well, look, this is what the judge said in this first summary judgment. Because whether something is transformative or not is hugely important to making the determination about fair use. And just for anyone who doesn't know what fair use is, because it's a fairly wonky thing in copyright law, it's a doctrine that allows people to use copyrighted materials without permission in certain circumstances. So that's why, I can quote from a book in a news article without first getting permission from the author to do so. My use would be transformative and thus fair. It's why people are allowed to create parody sketches of popular TV shows without getting sued by the creators. So whether something is transformative, whether it takes the materials and does something new with it, is one of the big things that judges look at when they're deciding if the use of copyrighted materials was legal or not.
The judge in the Meta case emphasized that market harm was a deciding factor, and you talked about this a little bit. Seemed almost frustrated the plaintiffs didn't build that part of the case. I guess, hearing this from the outside, right? It almost sounds like a judge who perhaps wanted to rule a different way and then said, you messed up so bad that I just you didn't do what you were supposed to do. Otherwise it could have been this. When you talked about that, it almost sounded like what you were saying. And I would love to be corrected if I'm wrong here. It's almost a hint maybe that if you want to argue this in the future, it could be the ruling that you're trying to get if you do a better job on this specific type of argument. Is that the vibe? What yes. Exactly was going on there? That
is exactly the vibe. I wouldn't say the judge was almost frustrated. He was pissed. He even in hearings that they were having leading up to this summary judgment, he was saying to the plaintiff's lawyers, like, if you are able to lay out why this is harming your clients financially, I'm going to rule in your favor. Like, it was sort of the plaintiff's case to lose in the judge's mind. And the summary judgment was sort of an indictment of the way that the case was argued.
Wow.
Yeah. So he seemed quite pained to be issuing the judgment that he issued.
Understood. Both rulings, of course, involved allegations of piracy, but only one judge allowed that part to go to trial. What is it there that made the courts kind of treat these issues so differently?
It's so wild watching all of these cases because it really cements the truth that it really depends what judge you get. I'm so curious how it would have played out if Judge Alsup had been the one sitting for the Meta case, because he really cared about piracy. So yeah, it truly can sometimes just come down to the judge's interpretation of the law. Also, the Anthropic case was a class action, and the Meta case was just limited to 13 plaintiffs. So I think, and again, I'm not actually a copyright lawyer, even though I'm obsessed with this. So I think that might have played into why one was going to trial and one wasn't. But yeah, I listened to so many hours of legal proceedings in both of these cases leading up to these judgments. And the whole way through, Judge Chabria didn't seem to want to hear about the piracy. And now we know why. It's because he wasn't planning on making it an important part of his ruling.
Understood. In reporting both stories, I'm curious if you got a sense of how these rulings are being received in the AI industry overall versus the creative and publishing sectors who are kind of at odds here. Yeah,
I get a lot of feedback, as you can imagine. It's so interesting because everyone is sort of declaring victory here. The AI companies obviously did technically win in the summary judgment sided with them. Advocates who support the idea that AI training is fair use are also just calling this a win, and they tend to be emphasizing the way both judges did say that AI training was transformative. But a lot of people close to the plaintiffs that I've spoken with and other plaintiffs that I've spoken with in lawsuits that are still ongoing and just advocates for rights holders, they're kind of chalking these up as wins too because of the huge caveats that the rulings came with. Like, now they have opportunities to go for damages worth billions and maybe trillions of dollars anytime that piracy was involved in the amassing of the data sets that are used to train. And then, yeah, the judge in the Meta case truly did leave a huge lane for anyone who wanted to bring a different lawsuit against the tech companies. So everyone's a winner somehow.
To round things out here, looking ahead, are there any cases or rulings that you are particularly watching that might further clarify the limits of fair use in AI training? Or maybe it's just what happens next in these cases?
Yeah, I'd say there are three that I have a close eye on. One is the New York Times versus OpenAI. And that had sort of long been considered one of the best laid out complaints against a tech company. They had provided a lot of instances that they were able to show OpenAI regurgitating word for word New York Times content. Similarly, there was a new case. Disney and Universal sued Midjourney, the image generation startup. Similarly to the New York Times case, they brought tons of receipts that they were just like all of these different images of very recognizable Disney and Universal characters like the Boss Baby and Darth Vader that had been generated by Midjourney. I think both of those cases will still be hugely important. And then there's also been a lot of rumors that the music labels are considering settling with the music generation startups Suno and Udio. And we haven't seen a settlement at all. So that would be huge too. So those are the three that I'm like keeping the closest eye on. But the Anthropic case kind of was a sleeper for me, and now it's hugely important. So there's probably at least one or two others going on that I should be paying attention to. If anyone listening wants to tell me what else I should be looking into.
Yeah, please reach out. In fact, if people would like to follow along with the work you're doing and maybe reach out, where are some places they can go to do that?
Yeah, well, of course, Wired.com. I'm publishing very regularly there. I'm on Blue Sky, Kate Nibs, X. I still sometimes am there at Nibs. Threads. I don't even know what my username is. Just Google me.
Yeah,
You'll find
there you
me.
go.
Yeah.
Kate, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. Always a pleasure to get to talk to you, especially kind of pulling all of this stuff apart and also nerding out about all of it, because I think it's also very fascinating. Thank you for your time, and we'll see you again soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Alrighty, folks, we're going to take a quick break before we come back with our final interview, this time about a phone that promises a little fairness. But first, let me tell you about Hawks Hunt, who are bringing you this episode of Tech News Weekly. As a security leader, you get paid to protect your company against cyber attacks. But it's getting harder with more cyber attacks than ever and phishing emails generated with AI. Legacy one-size-fits-all awareness programs don't really stand a chance. They send, at most, 4 generic trainings per year, and most employees ignore them. When somebody actually clicks, they are forced into embarrassing training programs that feel more like punishment. That's why more and more organizations are trying Hawks Hunt. Hawks Hunt goes beyond security awareness and changes behaviors by rewarding good clicks and coaching away the bad. Super, super cool stuff. Whenever an employee suspects an email might be a scam, Hawks Hunt will tell them instantly, providing that dopamine rush that gets your people to click, learn, and protect your company. As an admin, Hawks Hunt makes it easy to automatically deliver phishing simulations across email, Slack, or Teams using AI to mimic the latest real-world attacks. Simulations are personalized to each employee based on department, location, and more, while instant micro trainings solidify understanding and drive lasting safe behaviors. You can trigger gamified security awareness training that awards employees with stars and badges, boosting completion rates and ensuring compliance. Choose from a huge library of customizable training packages or generate your own with AI. Hawks Hunt has everything you need to run effective security training in one platform, meaning it's easy to measurably reduce your human cyber risk at scale. But don't take my word for it. Over 3,000 user reviews on G2 make Hawks Hunt the top-rated security training platform for the enterprise, including easiest to use and best results. It's also recognized as Customer's Choice by Gartner, and thousands of companies like Qualcomm, AES, and Nokia use it to train millions of employees all over the globe. Visit hawkshunt.com/security now today to learn why modern, secure companies are making the switch to Hawks Hunt. That's hawkshunt.com/security now. And our thanks to Hawks Hunt for sponsoring this week's episode of Tech News Weekly. All right, we are back from the break, and I'm excited to be joined by 9to5 Google's Will Sattelberg. Welcome to the show, Will.
Thanks, Mikah. That's the first time I've been referred to as that, because I only started at 9to5 last week. So that's
wow.
New. Yeah, you're the first to say that.
Brand new. Oh, I'm honored. Really excited to talk to you about this because I think these devices don't get enough attention, frankly. And so it's really cool to get to talk to you about the Fairphone 6, which sticks to the company's sustainable, repairable design roots. I'm curious, what are some of the hardware or design choices that stand out most this time around? And if we could, for the uninitiated, maybe you kick off by telling us about Fairphone's sort of overall MO.
Yeah, if you're in North America, you actually might not know Fairphone just because they're not a huge presence here, and we'll get to that later. But the Fairphone 6 is Fairphone's first smartphone in almost 2 years. It's not a radically new design, but it is a more modern design. It's got kind of what you expect from a modern smartphone: flat edges, flat back, curved corners, all that stuff, right? So like, it feels very modern. It's a little thicker than maybe like a Pixel, for example, or an S25. But yeah, basically what Fairphone centers on is sustainability and repairability, right? So this is a phone that is meant to last you the 8 years, and we'll get to that too, but the 8 years of guaranteed software support that Fairphone, delivers. And if there is any issues with the phone, it is designed so that you can repair it yourself without having to buy a new phone or go to a repair center or ship it away or file a warranty claim. Like, it is designed first and foremost for you to be able to get in there and do the work yourself with as minimal interruptions as possible. Like, nothing is glued down, for example. It's all screws.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now, one of the most creative additions in this version is the modular backplate system.
Yes.
Can you talk about how these accessories work and what possibilities it opens up for customization?
Yeah. So if you look at the phone, first of all, you'll see that it's got a removable back, which is rare and has been rare on phones for, even Android phones for basically a decade now. It's not hot swappable, right? You're not sliding this back off, but it's just two screws. And, along with those two screws, you can basically, once you take that plate off, you can slap on whatever optional accessory Fairphone sells. So they have, for example, like a grip back that is the same backplate, but with a built-in grip. You don't have to like add one with an adhesive. They have oh gosh, now I don't have the photos up, and now I'm forgetting. They have a whole bunch of them. There's a wallet one, for example.
Cool.
I also think that because Fairphone sells, replacement parts, you should just be able to buy, a back. So let's say you buy the Fairphone 6 in white, you should be able to get the green back and then just slap that on, and you have, a more unique take on a phone, just like that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I love the idea of a wallet back that's a little bit more fastened than the typical magnet.
Exactly.
That you
it's like fully built into the phone. So, I love MagSafe. In fact, I would love to see them make a MagSafe back for this. But at the same time, like, every MagSafe wallet I've ever tried will slip off every now and then. Like, if you put it in your pocket weird, and that's not going to happen with this phone.
Very cool. Let's talk about the new Moments mode.
Yeah.
How does it compare to minimalist phones like the Light phone, or of course, installing a third-party Android launcher that offers similar functionality?
So this is a pretty out of left field idea for Fairphone. Like, they have not done anything like this before, and in fact, there had not been a lot of leaks on this device, and so no one really knew what this hardware switch off to the side was going to do. It looks like a mute switch, but instead it's actually a hardware switch that activates what they call Moments, and it's a customizable alternative launcher that has different modes you can set. So you can set your essentials. You can the examples they give on the website are like deep focus or recharge or quality time, and then all of those modes have just 5 apps listed in text on the home screen, so that you are a little less likely to browse Reddit while you want to be just relaxing watching TV or something, right? Like, maybe it's just your messaging app and your phone app or something instead of social media. You can keep that for later. So it's sort of trying to be something like the Light phone without having you completely replace your smartphone with something that can't run any apps, right? This is trying to be best of both worlds.
Understood.
Yeah.
Now, with this, of course, there's this dedicated hardware switch that turns on Moments.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the decision there? Is this something that it feels like they're sort of pushing this onto you, or maybe it's helpful? I actually hadn't even thought about it as in pushing onto people until right now.
I'd have to try it in person. I have not held this phone to see, does it feel, rigid enough to avoid accidental switches. I wrote in my post that it reminds me a lot of, and OnePlus has just replaced it on their most recent phone with a button, but most OnePlus phones have had a mute switch similar to what the iPhone used to have, but theirs was vertical instead of horizontal like Apple's. And practically every OnePlus phone I've reviewed where I've slid it into my pocket, inevitably at least a few times during that review period or thereafter while I'm still using the phone, it will hit, and switch from silent to vibrate or silent to full sound. And I could see that happening here, depending on like how hard it is to push the button and flip the switch. It shouldn't be the end of the world as long as it doesn't interrupt your notifications, but I'd have to try it. I still think it's like a cool idea to have it linked to something physical. I think that makes it feel a little more like a decision you're making of like, okay, I'm not just toggling something in quick settings. I am flipping a switch and now my phone is kind of a different phone. And I think that's a cool idea, but I'd want to try it in person first.
Absolutely. Now, this is, of course, a big part of this. Fairphone is promising 8 years of software support, 7 major Android upgrades. How realistic do we feel that is, and does it set a precedent?
Yeah, as long as Fairphone is around as a company, and they've been around for a bit at this point. This is their 6th generation phone. I think it's fairly realistic. A lot of the we've seen Google and Samsung move to 7 years of OS upgrades and security patches. We've seen, OnePlus is not super far behind that, right? A lot of the on older Android devices, a lot of the roadblocks were, Qualcomm has stopped supporting this chipset after 3 or 4 years. Therefore, there's not a lot the OEM can do, even if they want to continue supporting it. That's not really a problem anymore. Qualcomm has gotten really good at supporting their modern Snapdragon chips. So, it's kind of as long as Fairphone is around, I would say this should get its full 8 years of software support, which is great. I think that takes us to 2033, which is like a wild thing to think that you would hold on to your phone. And I think that pairs well with the repairability, where it's like, okay, my battery is shot after 4 years. You just buy a new one, you swap it out with a few screws, and you're good to go.
Yeah, that is, again, a pretty cool thing. The idea of just being able to, swap as needed. Now, in terms of specs and pricing, how does the Fairphone 6 compare to other mid-range Android phones?
It's a little more expensive. I think the phone I would probably compare this to, the closest is Nothing's 3A Pro, which is like $150 cheaper, I believe, or maybe even $200 cheaper. You pay a little bit more upfront for a Fairphone because than you would for similar specs, because it's in this sustainable package, right? Not just replaceable, but also they're using recycled plastic and all of this like material. I think it's, as long as you're not a hardcore mobile gamer, right? If you're not playing Genshin Impact every night or something, I think this is a perfectly fine phone, at least for today. Obviously, mobile AI applications kind of complicate things a little bit. There's only 8 gigabytes of RAM. That's pretty low for on-device AI, but that might not be a thing that Fairphone customers really care about anyway, because they're chasing, more sustainability, more green-minded users. So if you're kind of just a general, I browse social media and the web and I text people on my phone kind of user, like, I think this is perfectly fine and will even last up through, certainly 2030, and maybe you'll start to feel a little bit of slowdown after that, but I think this will get most people through.
And then last but not least, for our US listeners, we know that the phone is not going to be available directly.
No, unfortunately.
How does that work, and how will it work if it does? And yeah, I mean, has it been your experience that Fairphone doesn't get a lot of attention in the US because of its inavailability directly?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I would love to see Fairphone come to the US. It's in addition to a duopoly kind of marketplace where Samsung and Apple kind of rule, and then Google is a third place alternative. The carriers also complicate things. Like it is difficult to, that is why OnePlus devices are really can be hit or miss here, even though they have been on stores like T-Mobile before. Nothing is another example. We're finally going to see them kind of take a step forward into the US with the Nothing Phone 3 next week, but they've been slow to approach the market. Similarly, if you want to buy the Fairphone in the US and you don't want to just like import it and jump through those hoops, the only way you can do it officially is buying through Fairphone's partner, Murina. Murina is a company, I believe, based out of France. that sells de-Googled versions of smartphones. So they're running like a custom ROM installed by Murena called EOS. They've been around for a few years now. I actually I used to write an Android piece. I reviewed or did a hands-on with their de-Googled Pixel tablet. So it's basically like they strip all of the Google apps and services out, and then they kind of have their own alternative app store. You can anonymously browse the Play Store. It's not like you can't find your apps. It's not quite as limited as something like a Fire tablet, but it is certainly not something for, to buy your parents or something. It is an enthusiast product, and it is going to be more expensive as well. So it's not really an option for most people, I would say, the de-Googled version. I'm curious if you can just kind of, get software from Fairphone and just, because this is, and I actually haven't looked into this. This is, I think, the third phone they've sold with Murena. So it's possible that those ROMs are already there, and you could maybe just flash like Fairphone's own ROMs and go back to a stock.
That would be
experience.
ideal. Yeah.
But you're going to be paying, whether you import it or buy it from Murena, you're going to be paying a markup and jumping through some hoops. And it's unfortunate because I think this is a really interesting phone, and it's doing like, it's got some cool ideas, and it's very like, oh, you want to get your hands dirty, right? You want to go in there and like swap the battery when you want, or like fix a camera or something. Like, I think that's a really cool idea. And I do think there is a market for it in the US, but it's a little too niche for Fairphone to probably fully step into this market.
Understood. Well, Will, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to join us today to talk about the Fairphone. I'm glad you're writing about the Fairphone. Of course, folks can head over to 9to5 Google now to check out the work that you're doing. Is there anywhere else they should look to keep up with what you got going on?
I'm on various social platforms. Lots of stuff coming down the pike for me at 9to5. We're working on more podcasts. I'm writing more editorials than maybe 9to5 has put out in the past. So yeah, it's going to be an exciting time. So follow me on social media, or just pay attention to 9to5, and I'll be there.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Mikah.
Alrighty, folks, we have reached the end of this episode of Tech News Weekly. Of course, you can go to twit.tv/TNW to subscribe to the show in audio and video formats. And I want to mention Club Twit at twit.tv/clubtwit. When you join the club, we've got monthly and yearly plans. You will gain access to some pretty awesome things. You will gain access to our ad-free versions of all of our shows. You'll also get access to the Twit Plus feeds. We've got 3 of them. One for little bits and clips, one for news events, and now I'm forgetting what the third one is, Anthony. News and bits and clips, and
so there's clips, which is just the like before and after. Club shows is all the events, and the news is like the keynotes.
There you go. Yes. So it was the Club Twit events one that I was forgetting as the third there. So I think recently Patrick may have said there's coming up on like 2-3 weeks of content there. So joining the club gets you access to all of that stuff, and access to the members only Discord server, a fun place to go to chat with your fellow Club Twit members and those of us here at Twit. We would love to see you in the club. I'd love to give you a little wave and have you check out some of the stuff we're doing in the club. I've actually been talking to our resident engineer, Burke, about some ideas that I have. I don't want to say more than that just yet, but I'm really looking forward to that. Some tinkering we might be doing soon. So please be sure to head to twit.tv/clubtwit to join the club. If you'd like to follow me online, I'm at Mikah Sargent on many a social media network, or you can head to chihuahua.coffee. That's CHIHUA.coffee, where I've got links to the places I'm most active online. And of course, be sure to check out my other shows, including shows that'll go out today, iOS Today and Hands on Apple. You can also check out every Sunday my show Hands on Tech. Thanks so much for being here, and I'll see you again next week for another episode of Tech News Weekly. Bye-bye.
The tech world moves fast, and you need to keep up for your business, for your life. The best way to do that? Twit.tv. On This Week in Tech, I bring together tech's best and brightest minds to help you understand what just happened and prepare for what's happening next. It's your first podcast of the week and the last word in tech. Cybersecurity experts know they can't miss a minute of Security Now every week with Steve Gibson. What you don't know could really hurt your business, but there's nothing Steve Gibson doesn't know. Tune in Security Now every Wednesday. Every Thursday, industry expert Mikah Sargent brings you interviews with tech journalists who make or break the top stories of the week on Tech News Weekly. And if you use Apple products, you won't want to miss the premier Apple podcast, now in its 20th year, Mac Break Weekly. Then there's Paul Thurrott and Richard Campbell. They are the best connected journalists covering Microsoft. And every week they bring you their insight and wit on Windows Weekly. Build your tech intelligence week after week with the best in the business. Your seat at tech's most entertaining and informative table is waiting at twit.tv. Subscribe now.